ScaleGrid provides multiple options to handle the backup and restore of your MySQL cluster. On your cluster details page, click on the backup and restore icon to view all the different options. The first option we're going to talk about is backup. ScaleGrid provides essentially two types of backups: on-demand and scheduled backups. On-demand backups are typically associated with an application event. For example, if you're releasing a new version of your application and you would like to take a backup of your cluster before releasing your application. Let's enter a name for this backup. You can also put in a comment. For the backup target, you can choose if the backup is taken on either the slave or the master, and by default the backup is taken on the slave. ScaleGrid implements backups using disk snapshots. On AWS, we use EBS snapshots, and on Azure, we use Azure snapshots. Scheduled backups enable you to set up recurring backups for your cluster. By default, it is enabled for all clusters that are created. All clusters are set to backup once a day, and 7 backups are retained. You can come into this UI and change the schedule as per your needs. For example, you can change the backup interval from 4 hours up to once per week. You can also control how many backups you want to retain, and as we discussed earlier, you can configure whether the backup is taken on the master or the slave. Once your backups are configured, restore is a one-click operation as well. In the Restore UI, you can select which backup you want to restore and simply click the Restore button. Essentially, our system then handles all the work necessary to swap out the disks, ensure the master-slave configuration is right, and the system comes back to running. So essentially, from the user's perspective, it's a one-click operation. The next operation we're going to talk about is Peek at Backup operation. A Peek at Backup is also a selective restore operation. This is useful when you want to access particular data in your backup, but do not necessarily want to restore your entire backup. For example, say you dropped a table by mistake or deleted a bunch of rows by mistake. So what you want to do is go back to your latest backup and you want to recover this data, but not necessarily restore this data to your production cluster. This is where Peek at Backup comes in. Essentially, you can select the backup that you would like to recover, enter a name if you want, and click Peek. What this does is create a new standalone MySQL load with this particular backup. This is like any other normal MySQL load, and it is unrelated to your production instance. So, once it's up and running, you can access it, download the data you want, and then throw it away. Another scenario where this is useful is for testing. A lot of our customers use Peek at Backup to create a copy of the production data, and they can test this production data with a new version of their application. The last option we're going to talk about is Delete Backups. This is typically useful for on-demand backups you no longer want to keep around. So you can come in, select the backup that you want to delete, and simply click Delete. That's it for our MySQL backup and restore options. As always, if you have any questions, please email us at support@scalegrid.io.